What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to episode 63 of the U.S.S. Enterprise D tutorial. I'm Zero Elite, and I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. And if you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. Today, we're going to be working on our um, shuttle bay again, but we're also going to be working on the very middle backbone of the neck. And that's why I have that screenshot up today, because we're going to be making a slight adjustment here. You can see it has this extra piece right here in the middle. That's what we're going to be building today. We're also going to be readjusting the lower impulse engine. Now you're going to notice in the picture this impulse engine is square. So this was actual screenshot from the show, and that's what we're going to be using today as our reference. And give you that nice square shape there. And this has a little bit of an indentation in there too, so we can get all up in there to see how close or how thick that is. And it's not super thick, but it definitely comes out just a little bit. So now I'm just going to go just a little bit forward here until we're in today's episode. All right, we're ready to rock. So you see we have the outline for that piece, but it's not sticking out like it should be. Um, this is one of the things I talk about when I'm doing these builds, that, pay attention to detail. It matters because, all these things that we're doing to the ship, um, one of them by itself, it's not really going to make a huge difference. But when you start adding in all those details and one after the other together, that's what's going to give you a difference with your build. So you don't necessarily have to have every single piece that you see in screenshots. But the more that you have, the better, is what I'm trying to get at here, because you're using these to get a closer representation of what the ship is. So we want to try to make it as close as we can as possible. So that's why we're coming back now. We're giving this that little bit of thickness in the middle. It's not changing the shape. It's not changing the build at all. Just giving a little bit more flavor or detail. And that's really what we want at this point, because now since the base shape of the exterior is done, now we can start making changes to it, or not necessarily changes, but adding to it to see what's missing is kind of what I'm getting at here. And that's why I always say it's good to have a starting point, which we have, because once you have that starting point, you can always see what you need to add. And that's going back into what I was saying, that you may not necessarily need to add every single detail, because sometimes in Minecraft things don't always translate over the same way. And maybe you add, a little bit of detailing on the Enterprise, the build itself that was on the ship, and you decided, like, okay, well, in Minecraft it doesn't look that good. Maybe we have to change that. These are things you're going to be running into, but in this case, making it thicker in the middle, I think it's definitely called for, and it's going to help to enhance the overall look of the back of the neck. It's going to make it give a little bit more texture to it, and I think it'll look a lot better. Um, and then we'll also be getting into adding in the extra, not so much extra detail on the impulse engine, but squaring it off instead of it having more of a V shape. Um, for the life of me, I couldn't find the screenshot that I had where the impulse engine went in the V. I might have done that off of memory, or maybe there was a screenshot that I had that was just not accurate. But when I was watching an episode of TNG, I noticed that the lower impulse engine was square, so that's something that I wanted to change too. Um, like I was saying, we'll also be getting into the shuttle bays as well today. I think we're going to be working on the shuttle bays a lot this week. I believe in tomorrow's episode we'll be working on the primary shuttle bay, which is pretty cool. Also, you're going to notice, didn't have a chance to do it yesterday because I had a problem with my recording session, but my schedule, my Minecraft videos is going to change. Not drastically, but I'm still going to be doing 3 videos a week. But instead of having videos on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, that's going to be shifting to Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Now, of course, this episode is going to drop on a Tuesday, and that's because I had a problem yesterday when I was recording, and I got through 2 episodes and didn't notice it until after the fact. And I didn't want to go back and uh, spend another 2 hours working on this. Um, so I decided just to hop into it today. But tomorrow there'll be an episode on Wednesday, and then there'll be an episode on Friday. and then next week we'll go into the full schedule of episodes dropping on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I think that's going to work out a little bit better, not only for me, but also for the people that are watching these episodes. Give you just a little bit of space between these episodes where you have time to build this up before the next episode drops. And I think that's going to work out pretty good. You know, I don't think I'm going to be deviating from that schedule at this point after, because I think that'll work out pretty well. Because what I'm going to be really trying to do going forward is recording these beforehand on the weekends and then dropping them as in a premiere. Today's episode won't be in a premiere, but tomorrow and Friday's episode will. Now, getting back into what we got going on here, you can see that on the left side, I just added one block going in, and now we're doing the same thing on this side, the same height in a half slab pattern. We're doing just one block. We're going to do this going all the way down. Because we're essentially taking the same pattern that we have, we're just adding a little bit of girth to it. We're just pretty much bringing it up by 2. So we're not necessarily doing anything super hard here, just giving a little bit more texture. That's going to help to bring out a little bit more shape in the ship. I was trying to think of any Star Trek news that I could think of off the top of my head. I haven't had a chance to watch it or read the interview for it, but I know that they were talking about Star Trek Lower Decks season 3. That's going to be coming out soon. Those of you that haven't watched Star Trek Lower Decks, can't recommend that show enough. It's a great show. It's got a little bit of something for everybody, and if you're a fan of Star Trek, the references are hysterical. It's definitely got a lot of heart, but that's something that I did see that I thought that was pretty cool. They're going to keep that going, and then of course we've got Strange New Worlds that's going to be coming out in the not too distant future. Definitely a good time to be a Star Trek fan because especially on this season of Lower Decks, there's a couple of ships that they've had on the show this season that could be possible contenders on ships that we might build in the future. You never know. So I definitely think it's a good thing because we got a lot of content to go off between the shows and Star Trek Online. They're really building up that library of ships that we can build off of going forward. Speaking of which, I've been talking a little bit about it here and there, but I'm still not officially saying it. We'll put it this way: I'm not going to officially say what my next build is going to be until I start working on it. But at this point, um, I've had a tremendous amount of requests for Voyager, and I'm pretty sure that's what the next build is going to be. But right now, my focus is on the Enterprise D. But even with that being said, if there's ships that you want to see me build on Minecraft or any builds in general, be sure to drop a comment below. Again, if people asking for it, it's something I'll definitely do. And if I don't build that right now, don't get discouraged. You never know. I might have people asking for that in the future, and I'll pan back to it. That's kind of how it was with Voyager. Maybe not in one sitting. I didn't have a ton of people asking for it, but over a period of time, it ended up being my number one request. Because I keep all those comments when people make suggestions, so that's kind of how I determine what my next build's going to be. But I do want to talk a little bit more what we have going on here. So we're doing a row of half slabs in the middle, and we're just going one down from the two sides. So you just want a half slab indentation in the middle. If you have more than that going up or down, you've done too many. You just want one cut above it, and then you'll be in good shape. Like I said, not doing anything drastic today. We're pretty much repeating the same steps that we had, just making it, just moving it up by a couple of blocks. But this will be pretty cool because we're really, I'm not sure if it's after this week or next week because I can't remember off the top of my head how much time I spent on the shuttle bays. But from there, we're really going to be getting into a lot more of the interior of the ship, which is cool. Because I'm looking forward to showing some of those rooms off that I've worked on, the engineering area and the bridge and the mall and the aquarium that has the navigation dolphins. And if you've watched Star Trek Lower Decks, the navigation dolphins are officially canon now, which I think is pretty hysterical. Because that was a concept for Star Trek: The Next Generation that didn't make it into the show. So, and it's funny because I built this thing out and I just decided, I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna have the navigation dolphins, and then they turned around and had them on Star Trek Discovery season 2, and I about fell over when I saw that because the episode was funny, but just the fact they made them canon, I thought that was pretty cool. Um, Yeah, and that's just goes into some of the things I'm trying to do with this ship. Thinking outside the box and adding things that you're not going to see ship to ship. That's something I'm really going to try to do going forward with my builds. Um, because after a while of building these things, it kind of gets redundant. So it's important, to have new areas and things like that to work on. And we can do some of that by looking into concept art and things that they intended to add in the ships, for the shows and movies, but maybe they just didn't have the budget or the time to do it. But the cool thing about that is even if we don't have a full concept of it, even just hearing about stuff like that, we can add it into our builds. And that's what ended up being the case with the aquarium because I wasn't able to really find any screenshots of it, but I found a couple of pieces of concept art. I found one concept art. Well, it wasn't even necessarily concept art. It was a blueprint for the Enterprise D, which showed you the area where the aquarium would go. And then I found concept art from Star Trek Online. I guess they were thinking about doing it, and for whatever reason, they decided not to. Which actually would have been very cool. It's something that I still think about even today because I play Star Trek Online every now and again um, when I'm not busy uh, raging at them over the facts, over the amount of money that they cost or charge for their ships and their gambling lock boxes, which is ridiculous. But I wish that they'd make their interiors a little bit more fleshed out a little bit, which would be pretty cool because as of right now, when I play Star Trek Online, I practically spend no time whatsoever on my interior of my ship, and it would be cool if they added some more features to give you more of a reason to do so. But that's neither here nor there, and it doesn't really have a huge factor in today's episode. Just something to talk about while working on this thing. But right now, we're in pretty good shape on our build. We've pretty much done what we're going to do to our backbone here. You're probably going to notice in the top here, top area, that our patterns started to stray off. Instead of being half slabs, those full blocks. We're going to come back and fix that. So if you want to make sure to have the same thing that I do, that's cool. But what I'm ultimately going to end up doing is changing that pattern rather the last couple of rows up here, rather than going up a full block. I'm going to change it to half slab so this way it matches going all the way down. I might actually end up increasing the length of this because I'm pretty sure that this line goes almost all the way up to those blue pieces, so I might be extending that out a little bit. But one of the reasons I kind of decided not to is because you can see my line right here. This is supposed to be a line point from where the saucer separates from the neck, so I just kind of decided to stop it there. But anyway, now we're going to be transitioning on into the next part of today's episode. And we're going to be getting some detailing done in our shuttle bays, which is going to be pretty cool. And I found a screenshot online which I thought looked great. I wanted to incorporate it into my build, and that's specifically the flooring for the shuttle bay. And also the numbering that you notice there, it's a number 3. Now that's not canon, but what we can do at least is we can maybe incorporate that into our build. Not so much on the outside, I don't want to do that, but maybe on the flooring. We'd have a number 3. We can, because this is would be considered the tertiary, this would be the secondary, and this would be the primary. So we can use that to decorate our ships a little bit. We see we've got the yellow pinstripe highlighted with the white. The only difference that's going to be between that screenshot and mine is that I'm also going to add in a touch of blue, just because I think it'll look a little bit nicer with the blue as well. Um, but this is something that we're definitely going to be using for all 3. And one of the reasons for that is I talk about this from time to time that when you're building your rooms on your ships, um, it's important to identify, what that identity is or the theme. And there's certain traits that you're going to carry with you from room to room. Now, it's not going to be that way for every single room because it's going to vary depending on what type of room it is. In this case, we're talking about the shuttle bay. So on our shuttle bay, the characteristics that we're going to transition over from room to room is the yellow pinstripe and the white highlights on the floor. Because when you have those 3, or you have those elements between the 3 shuttle bays, it's going to help bring them together. And what you're going to notice at that point is consistency. That's something that I see sometimes when I'm looking at other people's builds, maybe not necessarily even with Minecraft, or excuse me, with starships, with just Minecraft in general, is that people aren't consistent with their builds through and through from beginning to end. So you go inside their room, or maybe in this case a ship, you see a lot of random rooms that it just kind of feels like it's not part of the ship. And I think that's one of the reasons why my ships stand out, because I take that extra time to bring that together, and to design these rooms out and think of elements that I can add in that will have like a nice cohesiveness between them. So this way, when you're walking through the ship, it feels more like a well thought out design as opposed to a bunch of random rooms. Because when you're walking, like, or you're watching videos of Star Trek: The Next Generation, or you're on YouTube and you're watching a virtual tour of the Next Generation Enterprise, you notice that that ship has it. When you go room to room, deck to deck, it has that consistency. It doesn't honestly even matter what ship it is, whether it's any ship in Star Trek or um, space station, Federation, Klingons, you name it. They all have consistency going through and through. And we've spent this much time building out our exterior. We might as well take that same amount of time and work out the detailing on the inside, because it's almost just as important, if not more important, because that interior is helping us develop the identity of the ship. It's kind of what I'm getting at here. And eventually you'll get to a point where you get good enough to where you don't have to look at screenshots all that much, because you retain the information from doing it over and over again. And I'm not going to say that I'm perfect. I still use screenshots to this day. But like, for example, when I built the Disco Era Enterprise, when I was working on the interior, I didn't use as many screenshots as you would think. A lot of it I just went off of memory, because I'd done a lot of those rooms before, and I knew how it was, what I wanted to do ahead of time, maybe aside from some colors. But other than that, like, I didn't, uh, I just kind of winged it. And you'll start to do that too as you build these ships. Working on the outside, you'll start remembering patterns, and it'll start becoming a little bit easier for you to build these things. And the same thing with the interiors, the patterns that will eventually start to stick with you, because that's one thing that I've noticed as I've built these ships out since I've been doing it on Minecraft, is that you start to retain it, and in certain things they start to come a little bit easier. That's why, as hard as the Enterprise D was, I'm excited now that I've gotten this far, because now I've crossed that bridge, and hopefully a lot of this stuff will stick with me. And even if it doesn't, you still have the reference material to fall back to see how you did certain things. Um, so it's definitely a good thing. I try to talk about a lot of this stuff because it is important. Because if those of you that are trying to become better builders, repetition is key. You keep practicing at it, and eventually you'll get good to a point where you're using screenshots less and you're just going off of memory. But it's something that does take time to develop. I don't think anybody jumps in Minecraft and they build masterpieces immediately, or they build things exactly the way that they want it to be the first time around. I know I'm not that way. Sometimes, and those of you that watch my channel know that's how it is for me. Sometimes I'll do 3 or 4 attempts in some areas because I'm not happy with it. But I also don't shy away from talking about that stuff either, because it's in those mistakes, and it's through that trial and error sometimes where you really land on some really awesome designs that maybe you might not have thought of, um, unless you had, you know made your first couple of first couple of decisions the first time around. Because that's what usually happens to me when I'm stuck on something. I'll look at it, and I basically just evaluate it, decide what I like about it, I decide what I don't like about it, and what I can do to make it look better. And then I'll make a second attempt. And then if the second attempt doesn't come out the way I want it to, I basically go down the same process again. What I liked about it, what I didn't like, and what can I do to make it look better to get closer to the end goal, in this case, making it look more like the Enterprise D. And that's really the simplest way of describing that process. And I feel that it's important to talk about this stuff because I really want to include all this stuff in the tutorial, because people that watch this channel are trying to learn some of these things. And I got to be honest, I wish I had access to this stuff when I was first building on Minecraft, because a lot of this stuff, if not all of it, I've developed over a period of time of just playing the game and building different ships. And I've got my set of rules that I go by now, and they've really have helped me in a lot of ways, because now I build much more, well, not much more, but higher quality ships as opposed to stuff that I was building originally when I got on Minecraft. If you want an idea of what I'm talking about, just watch the first couple of videos that I have on my channel. You'll see exactly what I mean. You can pretty much see my entire portfolio of the stuff that I've built from beginning to end on my YouTube channel. Not everything, I haven't done videos on all my builds because some of them, I just either haven't gone around to doing it, or I didn't feel that maybe it was necessary to do a video for it. But it's got pretty much like 97% of it. So you can really get that feel of the progression that I've made over the 12 or 13-year period that I've been playing Minecraft, because I think I started playing it in like 2010 or something like that, give or take, about there. And that's not playing consistently either. We're talking taking breaks sometimes, maybe, a couple of months, maybe a year, maybe a year and a half in between. But over that period of 12 years or so, you start to develop this stuff as you continue on. So now what we're working on right now, getting into a little bit what we got going on here, is our walkway. You can kind of see it on the side right here. But the tertiary shuttle bay did have a walkway, and there's a couple reasons that I'm doing that. And that's because the far back corner here on the floor has those white concrete blocks, and eventually I'm going to want to cover those up so you can't even see them. And eventually what we fall on is that this walkway is going to help us to achieve that. Even though I don't think we're going to get there in today's episode, but we're pretty much planting the seeds from where we're going to come back to it and add to it. Again, going by, well, sometimes you just got to throw something down, see how it looks. And then that's where your brain starts working, and you start thinking of ways that you can fix it to where you want it where you want it to go, basically. So far, we're in pretty good shape. What we're ultimately going to end up doing is adding a couple of rows in the back wall there, and the actual walkway, we're going to be adding in layers underneath it to pretty much cover up those blocks. But that does look pretty cool looking at it from the outside, seeing the numbers, and that yellow pinstripe definitely helps to make the ship feel a little bit more fleshed out, even though that where we're at right now in the build, other than the corridors, that's virtually the only thing that's on the interior other than our the battle bridge. Pretty much a skeleton on the inside. But we're going to be fixing that as we go forward. Got a lot of stuff to do. This is going to be hands down the longest tutorial I've ever done. And it honestly wouldn't surprise me if we go past level 100, or excuse me, not level 100, but episode 100. I'm almost certain that that is going to happen. And it's probably going to go beyond that, because I've got quite a few screen captures that I've done so far to back that up. Now, some of them, I've only they're maybe a minute long or 30 seconds long, because anytime I do something on here, I try to record it. Um, but got a lot of content on here to do. And the crazy thing is, I'm not even done where I'm at. I still, where I'm at on the build, I still have a ton of work to do. I've got more detailing to do on the outside of the ship, and I still haven't fully fleshed out the interior the way I want to. I've been talking about this, something I think is going to be pretty cool, that when I build out the when I build out the holodecks, um, I'm actually going to have a couple of rooms that are activated. And I'm really, well, I'm not thinking about it. I'm going to do it. The one of the rooms I'm going to do is going to be an episode of Dixon Hill. It'll so be like a city in the 1930s. I think that'll actually be pretty cool. That's going to be one of the things that's going to help this build stand out. Now, I do want to get back into what we got going on here. As you can see right now that I'm testing out the windows. Now, I wouldn't repeat this step what I'm doing right now because when we come back in tomorrow's episode, those cuts are going to be gone. But it was still important to make this because basically I came across a problem. And before we get to that problem, the reason I made these windows too long, uh, and I literally mean that a too high block, is because in this screenshot here, you can see that the windows have a little bit of length on them. But the problem that we're going to run into doing that design is that the windows, when we use glass, how are we going to fill that in? Yeah. So that's why we're going to be closing that up and basically doing a single block window, because there's no way to do that with maintaining that shape. And that's one of the few limitations are in Minecraft. I don't understand why they don't have that on here. They definitely need to, but maybe one day they will. Full spectrum of colored half slabs in concrete and every other material, and then also glass. It would be fantastic to name several other things that they can add in this game. That would just bring it over the top. But some of these things that we're doing, like in this case, the windows, it's good that we're making these mistakes because this is essentially helping us to solve the problem. So now when we come back and we redo these windows, they'll be single blocks and will look nice and clean. And that's why it's important to to build stuff out, or maybe it doesn't come out the way that you want it to the first time, because this is how you come up with solutions to problems, by thinking how you can do to fix it. Anyway, I'm going to leave you guys with that. Think about some of that stuff, and we'll get into that when we next couple of episodes when we do the windows. But I think that's going to wrap us up today. I just want to thank everybody again for tuning in today's episode. And if you did enjoy this content, help me out and hit that like and subscribe button. I can't thank you enough for that. And also, of course, if you have any questions regarding today's episode or any builds you want to see me do, or just dropping by to say hey, be sure to drop a comment in the comment section. Usually pretty responsive, and I'll try to help you out if I can. And don't forget, you can always catch my new Minecraft episodes dropping Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7 p.m. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me. I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode. And of course, what did you build today in Minecraft?